Warning, do not watch this alone. This is not a haunted house. This is not a legend. This is a real church, built from human bones, and the dead inside it were never meant to be disturbed. Beneath the quiet town of Kutna Hora, in the Czech Republic, stands a small, unassuming church. From the outside, it looks peaceful. You see old stone, feel the silent air. It feels like holy ground. But step inside, and the walls are not stone. They are skulls, mountains of them. In fact, there are more than 40,000 human skeletons, all meticulously arranged into chandeliers. Intricate coats of arms, and massive pyramids of bone. Every single bone you see belonged to someone who died believing they would rest forever in this sacred soil. They were wrong, terribly wrong. The story of how this place came to be is as chilling as the sight of it. Back in the 13th century, an abbot returned from a pilgrimage to the Holy Land and sprinkled a handful of earth from Golgotha, the site of the crucifixion, across the cemetery. This simple act declared the land sacred, and suddenly, everyone wanted to be buried there. It became the most sought-after final resting place in all of Central Europe. Then came the plagues. The Black Death swept across the continent, and the cemetery's population exploded. Then came the Hussite Wars, leaving thousands more dead. Bodies arrived faster than graves could be dug. The cemetery overflowed. When space finally ran out, a difficult decision was made. The old graves were exhumed to make room for the new. The bones of the long dead were moved into the crypt beneath the church, and stacked. For a century, they piled up in the dark. Then, in the late 19th century, a local woodcarver was hired to organize the bones. But what he created was not mere decoration. It was a monument made of the dead, a chilling testament to mortality that was never meant to be a tourist attraction. He used the very people who sought eternal peace as his building blocks. Visitors to the Sedlec Ossuary often say, "The air inside feels heavy, thick. Breathing becomes difficult, like a weight is pressing on your chest. Thoughts can turn dark, suddenly, and without reason." Some have reported hearing whispering during their prayers, not in distinct words, but in the sound of breath, a collective sigh from the walls themselves. Others have sworn that the skulls in the Great Pyramids appear to change position between visits. They'll remember a specific skull, one with a crack or a unique shape, and when they return, it's gone, or another is in its place. The caretakers insist that nothing is ever moved. The arrangements are fragile, historical artifacts. But bones don't just settle on their own. They don't just shift in the silence. Something is happening within those walls when no one is watching. The first real warnings started coming from the people who had to spend the most time there, the security staff. Many now refuse to work alone after sunset. They report hearing distinct footsteps echoing in the empty halls, long after the last tourist has left. They describe soft clicking sounds, a strange rhythmic tapping that some have compared to the sound of teeth chattering in the cold. But the most disturbing reports come from the tourists themselves. There are documented cases of people collapsing without any warning. They aren't fainting from the heat or from shock. They experience a sudden, overwhelming panic, a primal dread that cripples them. Paramedics arrive, doctors run tests, and they find absolutely nothing wrong. The person is physically fine. But those people, the ones who have felt that suffocating fear, they never return to the bone church. Locals have their own explanation. They say, the church is not haunted by one spirit, or even a few. It is haunted by a legion, an army of 40,000 souls whose final rest was violated. They believe that when night falls, and the chapel is plunged into darkness, the bones remember what they once were. They remember the lives they lived, the bodies they inhabited, and they are not at peace. This is only the beginning of the story. What happens after the sun goes down is something else entirely. Have you ever heard of a church made of human bones? Not just a few relics, but walls, arches, and chandeliers crafted from the skeletons of thousands of people. It sounds like something out of a horror movie, right? But this place is real. It's known as the Sedlec Ossuary, or more grimly, the Church of Bones. Located just outside of Prague, this small Roman Catholic chapel holds the remains of over 40,000 individuals. But how did this macabre masterpiece come to be? And what secrets does it hold within its bony architecture? The story begins in the 13th century. A local abbot returned from a pilgrimage to the Holy Land, bringing with him a jar of sacred soil from Golgotha, the site of Jesus' crucifixion. He scattered this soil across the abbey cemetery. Word spread like wildfire. Suddenly, everyone wanted to be buried in this holy ground. The cemetery became one of the most desirable burial sites in all of Central Europe. Over the centuries, plagues, wars, and simple time filled the grounds beyond capacity. By the 15th century, a Gothic church was built in the center of the cemetery, and its lower level was designed as an ossuary, a place to store the bones of those who had been exhumed to make room for new graves. For hundreds of years, the bones were simply piled up in massive, chaotic pyramids. It was a stark, unorganized monument to mortality, but the church's most famous chapter was yet to be written. In 1870, a local woodcarver named František Rindt was hired by the Schwarzenberg family, who owned the monastery at the time. His task was to organize the overwhelming collection of bones. But Rindt wasn't just an organizer. He was an artist with a vision, albeit a very dark one. He didn't just stack the bones. He transformed them. He bleached and meticulously arranged them into the breathtaking and terrifying displays we see today. Imagine walking inside. The first thing you'll probably notice is the chandelier. It's enormous, and it's said to contain at least one of every bone in the human body. From massive bell-shaped mounds of bones anchor the corners of the room. Garlands of skulls and femurs drape from the ceiling like grotesque party decorations. And perhaps most famously, the coat of arms of the Schwarzenberg family is recreated in stunning, bony detail on one wall. One part of it even depicts a raven pecking at the eye of a decapitated soldier, a grisly tribute to a family victory, immortalized in human remains. For over 100 years, visitors have flocked to this strange sanctuary. They come with a mix of curiosity, fascination, and dread. Many people see it as a beautiful, if unsettling, work of art, a powerful memento mori, a reminder that death comes for us all. They argue that Rindt's creation isn't disrespectful, but rather gives a final, unified purpose to these forgotten souls. It forces us to confront our own mortality in a way that few other places can. It's a place of quiet contemplation, where the sheer volume of life represented by the bones is humbling. But not everyone feels that way. Others find the church deeply disturbing. They see it as the ultimate desecration of the dead. These weren't anonymous skeletons. They were people. They were mothers, fathers, children, soldiers, and peasants, each with their own story. They were buried in holy ground, expecting to rest in peace. Instead, their bones were exhumed, bleached, and turned into a tourist attraction. For these critics, the church is a spectacle of the macabre, turning human tragedy into a sideshow. And then there are the whispers, the legends that cling to the cold stone walls like ivy. At night, after the last tourist has left and the doors are locked, the church is said to change. The air grows heavy, and a deep silence falls, a silence that feels watchful. Locals have claimed to hear faint sounds drifting from within its walls, a low, indistinct murmur, like the sound of 1,000 whispers all speaking at once, just too quiet to understand. It's not a sound of words, but of pressure, a weight in the air that you feel more than you hear. There are other, more unsettling reports, unconfirmed stories from past caretakers, passed down through the generations. They speak of small, inexplicable changes discovered in the morning. A collection of skulls found slightly rearranged. A jawbone on a skeletal garland, no longer perfectly aligned. A skull in the Great Pyramid turned slightly inward, as if it had been looking at its neighbor. Nothing dramatic, nothing that couldn't be dismissed as a trick of the light or a faulty memory, but just enough to plant a seed of doubt, just enough to suggest a kind of awareness, a subtle life among the dead. One story tells of a priest in the early 20th century who was assigned to the church. He reportedly refused to continue holding services thereafter, only a few weeks. He claimed that during late evening prayers, alone in the chapel, he felt an overwhelming presence. He felt as if he were surrounded, as if unseen figures were standing just behind his shoulders. They weren't touching him, they weren't threatening him, they were just watching. He never explained it further. He was granted a transfer the following week and never spoke of it again. Visitors, too, have shared their own strange experiences. Some who spend too much time inside, especially those who let their minds wander, report having vivid nightmares for weeks afterward. The dreams are often the same. Endless corridors made of bone, skulls whispering their names from the walls, the suffocating feeling of being buried alive, trapped and aware. A few have even woken up with small, unexplained bruises on their arms and legs, as if they'd been gripped in their sleep. Most never speak about it again, burying the memory deep. So, what is the true nature of this place? Is it a work of art, a sacred tomb, or something else entirely? Some believe this church isn't evil. It's something far more complex. It's a reminder, a powerful, unsettling reminder, that the dead were never meant to be displayed like this. They were never meant to be arranged for artistry. They were never meant to be a spectacle for the living to gaze upon. Perhaps the church didn't curse the bones. Perhaps the bones themselves, in their silent collective presence, curse the space they inhabit. If you ever find yourself standing inside the Sedlec Ossuary, remember this. Do not listen for whispers in the silence. Do not stare too long into the empty eye sockets of the skulls, searching for a flicker of something that shouldn't be there. And whatever you do, do not let your imagination run wild. Do not imagine them alive. Do not imagine them watching you. Because some places don't need ghosts to be haunted. They already have the dead. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the dark and mysterious, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more tales that will make you question what you think you know. We'll see you in the next one.